Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're looking into some proposed changes to the 900 megahertz spectrum and how it could impact all of us ham radio operators. We're going to take a look at what's at stake here and explore some options in case things go a little sideways.
You know what's really interesting about this is that we're not just talking about some abstract frequency range here. The 900 megahertz band is really important for ham radio operators, especially those who are interested in digital modes and experimental projects.
That's right. We rely on repeaters in that band for wider coverage, and many of them operate right in that 900 megahertz band. It's also a great place for those of us who like to push the boundaries with digital modes or experiment with new technologies.
Absolutely. And now there's this company called NextNav. They're developing this really cool 3D geolocation system that's supposed to complement and even back up GPS.
Oh, wow. That sounds pretty futuristic. So it'd be like knowing not just your latitude and longitude, but also your altitude, and with incredible precision, even if you're inside a building or surrounded by skyscrapers.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're aiming for. And to make that vision a reality, they're petitioning the FCC for a slice of the 900 megahertz spectrum. They want 15 megahertz of bandwidth to support their mobile broadband needs.
15 megahertz. That brings up a big question for us hams, because, we have what's called secondary access to the 900 megahertz band. It's like sharing a park. You can use it, but you have to make way if the primary users need it. And in this case, the primary users are mostly government agencies and certain industrial, scientific, and medical devices.
That's a great analogy, and it really highlights the question, what happens to ham radio operations if NextNav gets approved? The specific impact on ham radio access to the 900 megahertz band isn't really clear yet, and that uncertainty is causing some concern in the community.
Yeah, it's like not knowing if you'll have a spot in the park on a busy day. To make things even more complicated, the 900 megahertz band is already pretty crowded as is.
Oh, it is, and it's not just other ham radio operators. You've got ISM devices in there, like medical equipment, even things like ultrasonic jewelry cleaners, and those new wireless utility meters.
Wow, that is a real mix.
Yeah.
And now if NextNav gets in there too, the potential for interference is going to shoot way up. Makes you wonder if there's even enough room for everyone.
I agree. And it seems like the FCC is a little concerned about that too, because they specifically asked about the cost and timeframes for relocating existing 900 megahertz users, including hams.
Relocation. Oh, that adds a whole new level of worry to this. Are they going to ask us to pack up and move to a different frequency band? What would that even look like? New equipment, logistical headaches. Moving is never simple.
It's not just about the logistics. It's like being told you have to move out of your apartment, but not knowing where you'll end up or what it will be like. And on top of that, it seems like ham radio operators haven't really been included in the discussion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was reading about how one ham radio YouTuber was raising concerns about NextNav not really engaging with the community, in any meaningful way. Their petition relies on an ARRL statement that's over 10 years old.
Yeah.
Like they haven't bothered to talk to hams about what they need or how this would impact them.
That's true. It raises questions about whether our needs and contributions are being considered in this whole process.
So let's think about worst case scenario for a second. If we are asked to move out of the 900 megahertz band, where could we even go? What other frequency ranges might work?
Well, one option that comes up a lot is the 220 megahertz band. Some people call it the forgotten band because it's not as busy as some of the more popular ham bands.
So less congestion would mean more space for everyone, right? More space to experiment and communicate without stepping on each other's toes. That sounds promising.
It does. But with radio, there are always trade-offs. One of the biggest hurdles with the 220 megahertz band is that equipment isn't as easy to find as it is for other frequencies.
So finding the right gear could be tricky and probably more expensive too.
Exactly. If fewer companies are making equipment for that band, prices are probably going to be higher. That could be a real barrier, especially for new hams or those on a budget.
Supply and demand, right.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of propagation, how radio waves travel. The 220 megahertz band kind of falls between VHF and UHF in terms of how it behaves.
So it might be good for local or regional communication, but not so great for talking to someone across the world.
That's a good summary. Now, another option, although it might be a long shot, is the 1.2 gigahertz band.
1.2 gigahertz. That's getting into microwave territory, isn't it?
It is. That band is mostly used for amateur satellites and other specialized things, but there might be some little pockets of bandwidth that could be used for ham radio stuff on the ground.
That's an interesting thought. I can already imagine hams setting up high-speed data links
Yeah.
or playing with cutting-edge microwave technologies.
The possibilities are exciting, but we have to be realistic about the challenges. Equipment for 1.2 gigahertz is even more specialized and expensive than 220 megahertz. We're talking high-frequency, low-noise amplifiers, fancy antennas, and other gear that could be out of reach for most people.
So probably not beginner-friendly.
No, not really. Plus, there's atmospheric attenuation. Basically, radio waves at higher frequencies, like 1.2 gigahertz, get absorbed by the atmosphere easier than lower frequencies.
So it's like shining a flashlight through fogs. The signal gets weaker the farther it travels.
Exactly. Rain, fog, even humidity can all make the signal weaker, which makes long-distance communication harder. Oh, and we can't forget about the regulations. Opening up 1.2 gigahertz for ham radio use would need approval from the FCC. And that's not a quick or easy process.
Sounds like a lot of red tape.
It can be. The FCC have to balance the needs of hams with the needs of everyone else using that band. It's a tough job.
Yeah, they have to consider everyone involved. It's a shared resource after all.
Exactly. And that brings up a really important point, the idea of coexistence. No matter where we might end up moving to, we need to be mindful of sharing the space with other users. This might mean using different modulation schemes or implementing interference mitigation techniques and just generally being good neighbors on the bands.
Like moving into a new apartment building. You have to be considerate of your neighbors.
I love that analogy. It really captures the spirit of responsible spectrum sharing. Yeah, it really highlights the spirit of sharing and being mindful of other people, using the radio spectrum.
And it's interesting because as we're thinking about all this relocation and these different bands, it really strikes me how adaptable the ham radio community has been, throughout history.
That's true. Hams have always been pioneers, pushing the limits of technology, finding new ways to communicate. They've embraced new modes, experimented with different frequencies, and really adapted to a radio landscape that's constantly changing.
It's almost like ham radio has this flexibility built right into it,
Absolutely. And this situation we're in now, while it is concerning, it could actually lead to some real innovation.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, they say.
Exactly.
So maybe this is a chance to revisit some of those forgotten bands, or develop new ways to deal with interference, or even explore completely new uses for ham radio technology.
It could be. Imagine hams leading the way in developing communication systems for disaster relief, or scientific expeditions. Even space exploration.
Wow.
The skills and knowledge that hams have are so valuable. The potential for contributing to society in a big way is definitely there.
It's inspiring to think about how much impact ham radio can have.
Yeah.
Beyond just hobbyist communication.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the educational side of ham radio. It's a great way to learn about electronics, radio wave propagation, and all the science behind communication. This whole band relocation thing could inspire a whole new generation to explore these fields.
That's a good point. It's a good reminder that ham radio is so much more than just a hobby. It's a community of people who love learning and experimenting, and always pushing the boundaries.
A community that loves challenges and embraces change. I have no doubt that whatever happens with this 900 megahertz issue, hams will find a way to adapt and keep innovating and keep making their mark on the world.
Well said. To all our listeners out there, whether you're a veteran ham or just starting out, stay engaged, stay informed, and never stop learning. The future of ham radio is bright, and your contributions are going to help shape it. We've got links in the show notes where you can read the full FCC public notice and NextNav's petition. And don't forget, the deadline for submitting comments is September 5th, so make sure you get yours in.
Don't miss your chance to be heard.
And most importantly, keep that spirit of experimentation and community alive. That's what makes ham radio special.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's not just about being considerate of other users. It's also about, recognizing that the ham radio community has always been about sharing knowledge and helping each other out.
Oh, for sure. Hams are always willing to lend a hand, whether it's troubleshooting a technical problem or offering advice to a newcomer.
And I think that spirit of collaboration is going to be more important than ever as we navigate these potential changes to the 900 megahertz band.
Absolutely. We need to come together as a community and make sure our voices are heard.
Exactly. And that means staying informed, engaging in the discussions, and making sure we're representing ham radio's interests.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the 900 megahertz spectrum shakeup. We hope you found this discussion informative and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
We hope so.
As always, we encourage you to do your own research and draw your own conclusions. The world of ham radio is constantly evolving, and it's up to all of us to stay engaged and help shape its future.
That's the beauty of it.
And until next time, 73.
73.